Sometimes we think we know it all. We believe we fully understand the woman beside us, that a couple of superficial gestures and a well-rehearsed routine are enough to keep that spark alive. But the truth is, we're far, very far, from what they really desire. Did you know that most men never actually touch a woman in the way she truly longs for? And I'm not just talking about the physical aspect. I'm talking about a connection that goes beyond the obvious, something few people understand, and even fewer manage to practice. The problem is that we get stuck in the obvious, in the expected. But what if I told you that there are hidden keys, small details that, if you learn them, could completely transform your intimate life? Many men never discover this, and the consequences are clear: distance, lack of passion, disconnection. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are paths, strategies, and above all, an ancient wisdom that can change everything. My name is Celia, and if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I promise that what's coming will not only surprise you, but also give you the tools you need to understand, connect, and touch a woman in ways you never imagined. And believe me, once you do, everything will change for you. Let's begin. 1. Read her body's signals. There's something many men don't understand, but it makes all the difference. The signals a woman sends aren't always verbal. In fact, most of the time, her body is speaking to you without saying a single word. But the question is, are you listening? This is one of the reasons so many relationships lose their spark, because of a lack of attention to those little gestures that change everything. A woman can say much more through the way she moves, how she looks at you, or even how she slightly leans her body toward you than she ever could with words. Every signal, every small detail is an invitation to connect on a deeper level. But that connection only happens when you learn to observe, to tune into what she's not directly telling you. I remember once, years ago, when a close friend confided in me that her relationship had drastically changed, simply because her partner began noticing those subtle signals. She couldn't believe it. Before, he just followed a routine, but one day, without warning, something shifted. He started paying attention to the way she sat next to him, or how her hands would brush against his, almost unintentionally. These were signals that had always been there, but he had never noticed. The difference was night and day, because it was no longer about following a mechanical script. It was about tuning in to what she truly wanted. This isn't just anecdotal. Science backs it up. Recent studies show that recognizing body language and nonverbal cues in a relationship significantly increases attraction and emotional intimacy. The female brain responds powerfully when it feels seen beyond the obvious. By noticing those small details, like a slight lean towards you or the subtle touch of her hands, you can open the door to a deeper intimacy, one that most men never get to experience. But it's not just about looking. You have to learn how to touch, and I'm not talking about touch in the most obvious sense. It's a subtle touch, a brush at the right moment, in those forgotten areas that can awaken an emotional and physical response that few men know how to trigger. Think about this. Everyone knows a hug can be comforting, but a hug given when she doesn't expect it, a gentle touch on the small of her back while you're walking together. Those are the details that make a woman feel seen, cared for, and above all, understood. True connection doesn't happen when you do what you think she expects. It happens when you read the signals she's giving you and respond with subtlety. It's like a dance, one that doesn't follow preset steps, but flows according to what each moment calls for. I invite you to try a small exercise the next time you're with her. Don't focus on what she says, but on what she doesn't say. Watch how she moves her hands, how her breathing changes when you softly touch her shoulder or wrist, how she leans in when she feels you're truly listening. These little details are the key to unlocking a world of intimacy that I guarantee very few men ever experience. Because in the end, it's not about how many words are exchanged, it's about how many of those hidden signals you catch and how you use them to create a connection that's much deeper, much more intimate than you ever imagined. 2. Her timing and pauses. Tell you more than you think. If you've ever felt like, despite your best efforts, Something is missing in those moments of intimacy. You might be overlooking a fundamental principle: rhythm. It's not about rushing to a goal or following a rigid pattern. The true art of touching a woman lies in knowing when to move forward, when to stop, and when to simply wait. Many men make the mistake of thinking that passion and intimacy need to be a constant flow of action. But what's often misunderstood is that the power of the pause, that moment when you stop and let silence speak, is where the greatest tension, and with it, desire, is created. The human brain is wired to crave what it doesn't yet have, and when you master the art of anticipation, you can create a much deeper connection than you imagine. The key is not doing everything at once, but spreading out the intensity. I remember a conversation I had with a wise friend, a woman who had lived long enough to understand the nuances of human connection. She told me, "Men think it's all about reaching the end, but the real secret is in what happens before that moment. It's in the pauses, those moments of waiting, when she truly starts to feel like you care." This relates closely to what psychologists call active anticipation. Studies have shown that when someone expects something pleasurable, their brain starts releasing dopamine, the same chemical that makes us feel happy and connected. By pausing right when she expects you to continue, you create a desire that builds unconsciously. It's like waiting for a storm that never arrives. The tension lingers in the air, and when you finally choose to act, it feels like a release. Let me share a story with you. Some time ago, I met a woman who confided in me that she had been going through a rough patch in her relationship. She said her partner always seemed rushed, like he didn't have time to enjoy the small moments of intimacy. One night, after a deep conversation, he decided to change. He started touching her more slowly, pausing just when she wanted him to continue, and looking into her eyes without saying a word. At first, she didn't understand what was happening, but soon, the connection they experienced was unmatched. It wasn't the intensity of the acts, but the intensity of the in-between moments, those that almost everyone overlooks. Rhythm is like music. You can have the perfect melody, but if you don't know when to pause or change the tempo, the magic fades. There's no need to rush or get to the happy ending in the first minute. Instead, I suggest something different. Play with time. Move in slowly, stop when she least expects it, and watch how her body reacts. Sometimes, a light touch on her cheek followed by a few seconds of silence can be more powerful than any other gesture. There's a rule I often share with those who seek my advice: desire grows in empty spaces. When you fill every second with action, you leave no room for anticipation to bloom. But if you master the art of pauses, if you learn to make her want you to continue, you will have unlocked one of the greatest secrets of physical and emotional connection. Because in the end, intimacy isn't about how much time you spend touching her, but how you manage every second. Pauses create space for both of you to breathe, where desire can grow and where true magic happens. 3. Your power lies in how you touch her. It's something many underestimate, thinking that all touches are the same, that any physical gesture will have the same effect. But the reality is very different. What defines an intimate connection isn't just the act of touching, but where and how you touch. The difference between a touch that merely grazes the surface and one that truly evokes a deep response can be so subtle that many men don't even notice it. Women, by nature, have certain areas of their bodies that are far more sensitive to touch than others. However, most of the time, these areas go completely unnoticed. Why? Because we're too focused on the obvious, on the parts we believe should always be the center of attention. But there's an entire world of sensations hidden in places that, when touched with the right intention and delicacy, can create a connection many have never experienced. I want to share something personal with you, something I learned from my own experiences. In a past relationship, my partner would follow the same routine every time. It was predictable, almost mechanical, until one day, without any apparent reason, he decided to change. Instead of following the usual path, he started exploring areas he had never touched before. The inside of my wrist, the lower part of my back, just above the hip. It was so simple, so unexpected, but the impact was immediate. I felt a different, much deeper connection simply because he decided to break the routine and pay attention to the less obvious areas of my body. There's a scientific explanation for this. Various studies in neuroscience have shown that certain areas of the body are more densely packed with nerve endings, making them extremely receptive to soft, controlled touch. One of those areas is the inner forearm, a place many overlook, but when stroked gently, it can evoke a surprising physical and emotional response. Another one of these zones is the back of the neck, an area that, when touched properly, can trigger the release of oxytocin, the so-called love hormone, which fosters a feeling of trust and connection. But it's not just about where you touch, it's about how you do it. A superficial, thoughtless touch doesn't have the same impact as one that conveys presence and care. It's the difference between a touch that goes unnoticed and one that leaves a lasting impression. And here is where the true art of touch comes in. You don't need to be intense or quick. What matters is the quality of each gesture, how you approach those forgotten areas and touch them as if it were the first time, with curiosity and respect. I suggest something for you. The next time you're with your partner, instead of heading straight for the usual areas, try something different. Start with the inner part of her arm, stroking slowly from the elbow to the wrist. Notice how her breathing changes, how her body responds without a word. Then, bring that same softness to the back of her neck, just at the base, and you'll see how such a simple gesture can create a closeness that few men ever achieve. Remember, it's not just about touching, but about understanding how and where to create pleasure. If you can master this art, you'll have discovered a way to connect that goes far beyond the physical, something rooted in the emotional world, in that part of her being that very few get to know. Because, in the end, what every woman desires isn't just to be touched, but to be understood. And when you learn to listen to her body, when you let go of assumptions and take the time to explore those forgotten areas with the attention they deserve, you create something much more than a physical experience. You create a space of trust, of surrender, where she feels completely seen and valued. And believe me, that is the true key to a deep connection. It's not just what you touch, but how you do it, and where you choose to focus. The small gestures, the most subtle details, are what truly make the difference. 4. How to avoid the ordinary. The problem with many relationships is that they fall into routine. It becomes a predictable, almost automatic script, and over time, what was once exciting and fresh turns into something monotonous. However, true intimacy, the kind that makes you feel alive, isn't found by following the script. It's found in the unexpected, in those small gestures that break the routine and surprise her in ways she never imagined. A dear friend of mine, who had been through several long-term relationships, once told me something essential. What frustrated me most wasn't the lack of love, but the lack of creativity. I knew exactly what was going to happen, when and how. There was no mystery, and mystery is what keeps the spark alive. Her partner, with the best intentions, always followed the same pattern, as if he had learned a script and didn't know how to deviate from it. But what she desired, what all of us desire on some level, is the ability to be surprised, to feel that at any moment something could change in a way that makes us feel seen, desired, and most of all, valued. Breaking the script doesn't mean doing something grand or extravagant. In fact, it's often the simplest gestures that have the greatest impact. An unexpected touch in the middle of a serious conversation, a hug from behind while she's cooking, or even a hidden note with a message only the two of you understand. It's these small acts, the ones that don't follow a pattern, that bring out a smile and reignite the spark that may have faded without you realizing it. Let me tell you a story I heard about a couple who had been together for over 20 years. They had fallen into a routine, and while they still loved each other, something was missing. One night, while she was working in her studio, he decided to do something completely out of the ordinary. Instead of following the usual ritual, he walked into the room, turned off the light, and without saying a word, hugged her tightly from behind. as if it were the first time he had ever touched her. In that moment, she confessed to me later, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the act itself, but the fact that it was unexpected, that it broke the predictable, and reminded her that after all these years, he could still surprise her. These kinds of gestures have immense power because they show that you don't take what you have for granted, that you still take the time to think of ways to make her feel special. You don't need to buy expensive gifts or plan elaborate dinners. Sometimes the most effective thing is the simplest: an unexpected message in the middle of the day, a soft kiss on the neck while watching a movie, or even something as simple as changing directions when she thinks she knows where you're going. Science backs this up as well. The human brain responds to change and surprise with a release of dopamine, one of the most pleasurable chemicals. This is why new or unexpected experiences tend to be more memorable than daily routines. When you break the script, you're not just waking up her body, but also her mind, her curiosity, her desire for more. So how can you apply this to your life? The first step is to observe your patterns. Do you always do the same things? Has your relationship fallen into a series of routines that you both follow without thinking? If the answer is yes, it's time to break free from that. The next time you're with her, do something she doesn't expect. It doesn't have to be big, but it does have to be different. Maybe it's a touch in a place you never usually touch, or perhaps a last-minute change of plans that makes her smile. The key is the element of surprise, showing her that even when things are going well, you're always looking for ways to make them even better. And don't worry if at first you don't know exactly what to do. The simple act of trying is already a huge step. She'll notice it, she'll feel it, and that small break in the routine could be the beginning of something much deeper. Because in the end, what we all want is to feel that our relationship isn't a fixed formula, but a space where there's always room for creativity, surprise, and of course, genuine connection. Breaking the script isn't something you do just once. It's a way of living the relationship, of keeping it alive, of remembering that even as time passes, there's always something new to discover. And when you achieve this, she won't see you as someone predictable, but as someone who, every day, has the ability to surprise her and make her fall in love all over again. 5. Why your confidence is the key for her to trust you. Confidence is one of the most attractive things you can offer a woman, but I'm not talking about the shallow kind of confidence that comes off as arrogance or boasting. No, I'm talking about deep confidence, the kind that comes from a place of inner security, from a self-love that doesn't need external validation to exist. And here's the real secret. For a woman to fully trust you, you must first learn to trust yourself. It's interesting how many men try to win a woman's heart before they've conquered their own. Deep down, they hope she will give them the sense of security they lack, the sense of worth they seek outside of themselves. But the truth is, to create a real connection, you first need to know, value, and love yourself. Because when a woman senses that you are secure in who you are, that you don't depend on her approval, that's when she can truly open up to you in a more authentic and profound way. I remember a conversation with a friend who, after years of failed relationships, told me something that changed the way she looked at men. She said, "What I'm looking for isn't someone who makes me feel safe. I'm looking for someone who is already whole, who doesn't depend on me to feel good about himself. Only when a man is at peace with who he is can he offer me that same peace." And it's true. A woman wants to be with someone who knows what he wants, who respects himself, and therefore can respect her in every way. Psychology supports this as well. When you have good self-esteem, when you work on your self-love, you project a different energy. You don't need to prove anything because you already know your worth. And that confidence, that inner peace, is something a woman notices right away. Emotional security is contagious. If you're calm and confident in yourself, she will feel more comfortable, more open, and more willing to trust you. But I know this isn't always easy. We live in a world that constantly tells us we're not enough, that we need more to be valuable, more money, more success, more validation. And in the middle of all that, it's easy to lose sight of what's important, that your worth doesn't come from what you have, but from who you are. I invite you to take a moment and think about yourself. Are you satisfied with the person you see in the mirror? If the answer is no, don't worry, because self-love is a continuous journey. It's not about reaching impossible perfection, but about working on yourself every day. Accepting your mistakes, learning from them, and improving without punishing yourself for not being perfect. True confidence comes when you stop chasing the approval of others and start giving yourself the value you deserve. Working on your self-love doesn't mean you stop caring about her or the relationship. On the contrary, the more you work on yourself, the better the connection you can create with her. Because once you're able to give yourself what you need emotionally, you can offer her the same without expecting anything in return. And that's powerful. Remember, true confidence doesn't come from what you own or how many victories you've achieved in life. It comes from accepting yourself as you are, being aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and still being at peace with it. When you see yourself with love and respect, she will notice. Because when a man is whole within himself, he projects an energy that says, "I'm here, I'm enough, and I don't need anything more than to share this peace with you." And here's a practical tip. Start with small steps. Spend time on what you're passionate about, on what makes you feel good. If there's something you think you can improve, do it for yourself, not for others. And when you're with her, don't try to impress her. Just be yourself, confident that who you are is enough. That's the greatest display of security you can offer. Because in the end, the secret to security is simple. The more you work on your self-love, the easier it will be for her to trust you. And when both of you are secure in who you are, you'll be able to create a relationship based on something much deeper than words. A real, authentic, and lasting connection. In the end, everything we've explored here serves a purpose far deeper than simply improving your intimate life. It's about understanding that every action, every gesture, every moment you choose to truly connect with someone begins with the relationship you have with yourself. Intimacy isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual. It's the ability to open up to another person because you know and value yourself enough to allow yourself to be vulnerable, present, and authentic. I want you to remember something essential. Every step you take to improve in these areas not only transforms your relationships with others, but also your relationship with yourself. When you learn to touch not just the body, but the soul of the person you love, when you break the script and surprise with your attention, and when you trust yourself, you open the door to a kind of connection that few ever get to experience. And that is the true magic of life, of relationships. My name is Celia, and this space is for you, a place where we can talk about important topics, unfiltered, but always with respect. Here, my mission is to help you find ways to improve your quality of life, not just in the intimate aspects, but in everything you do. Because every small change we make within ourselves reflects in our relationships and how we live our daily lives. If this is your first time on the channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What's coming in the next videos will not only surprise you, but also give you valuable tools to keep growing. And if you've made it this far, it means you take your personal evolution seriously, and for that, you have my full respect. I want to know who the dedicated ones are who made it to the end. So comment the phrase, "I love wisdom," and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I'm excited to read your comments and see who's joining me on this journey of self-discovery and growth. And before you go, I invite you to share this video with someone you think needs to hear these words. Sometimes, a simple gesture, a piece of advice, can change someone's day, or even their life. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.